These manly men are playing balls. This is a ball game. Grab a ball and play it. Don't ask questions. Shoot first. Ask questions never. That's the spirit. Don't even waste your breath asking about the game. They wouldn't know anyway. They're way past their prime. You are immediately surprised by the ball's lack of weight. No matter, you'll make it work. A chilly breeze ruffles your hair as you stand there, feet firmly planted. All sounds, smells, even the wind, everything fades until the only thing left is the union of man and ball.
Merde! Bordel de merde!
So, there's this game, Disco Elysium. It's an Estonian point-and-click role-playing game, and it captures something about being a person that I'm having a very hard time putting into words. So in most computer RPGs, like this one for instance, when a handsome man asks you if you want to glass a town full of people, his eyes just glaze over into this expression of apathetic anticipation.
You'll rig it to the bomb, then you'll get paid. Handsomely. What do you say?
And suddenly, you're alone. In that isolation, you have a hidden choice, layered on top of the explicit one you were just handed. How are you going to approach role-playing? There's two options I want to talk about, and the first is the way I think most role players would want you to come at it, which is to ask, what would my character do? You're a method actor, and you do your best to put yourself in the mind of your character. So you ask yourself, is the character I've created the kind of guy who would murder a small community for an apartment? Well, what has he done so far? Shot some cockroaches, killed some cops, walked a kilometer. Who's to say? The other is a little closer to home, which is to simply reach into your own soul and think, what would I do? In tabletop role-playing games, which the video game RPG genre takes a lot of cues from, it's generally considered a little taboo to simply play as if you were personally inserted into the story. This is for a lot of reasons, but in a game about collective storytelling, your character isn't always going to succeed. And if your character is just you, it can make things emotionally complicated when they fail or, God forbid, die. In video games, this taboo isn't really there in the same way. With single-player games, there's no one watching you, or at least not usually. If you've tied up a little morsel of your self-esteem in the success of this character, just load an old save. Some role-playing purists might judge you, but those people are nerds. I've played RPGs both ways, and even though I think the former is more in the spirit of playing a role, I've probably had just as much, if not more, fun just imagining it's me in there, which is part of why I've never really been that interested in doing evil runs. I'll just say it. I like it when the character I'm pretending to be does the nice thing, and I usually don't like it when they hurt the nice people. So, if that's how you enjoy playing video games, and somebody says,
Let me get this straight, you like to self-insert yourself into Bethesda games?
You say, I do, and I'm tired of pretending that I don't. Anyway, so there you have it. I'm a filthy casual, and you guys can tune in next time. Disco Elysium. Yes, this is a Disco Elysium video. Disco Elysium. It gives you a third option by, I haven't really described Disco Elysium yet. So, for the uninitiated, Disco Elysium is a narrative-driven point-and-click adventure game written by Estonian novelist Robert Kurvits. It's wildly intelligent, and this video will feature very light spoilers. So if you already intend on playing it and want to go in blind, get the heck out of here. But if you've already played it and want to hear my take, or maybe you still need convincing, stick around. I'll be careful with you. To start, it's important to understand the medium Disco Elysium works in. Every time your character interfaces with a person, object, or even a sensation, the game narrates it to you as a dungeon master would, and you pick your next course of action by navigating dialogue trees as if you were talking to a real dungeon master over the tabletop. This is already onto something special, because anyone who plays TTRPGs will tell you that talking to the DM and interrogating more details about the world is basically half the game. And that DM voice, how they convey it all to you, can really make or break a whole game. And this DM's voice is sublime. A flawless merger of two voices, the brilliant and unhinged authorial voice of Robert Kurvitz, and the rich melodic narration of Lenval Brown. Here's the game's dungeon master narrating the act of walking up to a fan.
This fan has two chain pull switches. One ends in a tiny fan, the other in a light bulb. A truly horrific necktie has somehow attached itself to one of the blades.
And here it is narrating High Five.
You could add an ace's low to it, if you like, by turning your back after the high and waiting for another. The high arrives with a sharp slap. As you turn around, there is a moment of doubt. Feels like that low ain't gonna connect. Chill, it's gonna connect. But then it does, and with furious precision. The lieutenant is not one to leave an ace's low hanging.
Even though you're often seeing this stuff on screen, I can't stress enough the transformative effect of absorbing the world in this way. But I digress. When you're making these role-playing decisions, you're not just watching a movie. Disco gives you more direction as everything gets filtered through this narrator. They're the director laying out the scene, and you're the humble improv actor, making it up as new information comes to light. As he's reading the scene to you, the narrator takes on different perspectives from a whole peanut gallery of your cognitive functions, which chime in and start telling you what you're thinking and feeling. In Disco Elysium, the character you play as isn't the thoughts and feelings they're experiencing. Those are basically just supporting characters helping to nudge your decisions. It's a lot like the film Inside Out, except instead of 5 emotions, there's 20 of them, and they represent your cognitive functions like perception, rhetoric, or the capacity for human cruelty. For example, here's what happens when you put on a pair of pants.
You hear a jingle. Keys are clinking in the pocket of your flare-cut pants. It says, whirling in rags, on the aluminium keyring. There is a single key on the ring. The number 1 is etched on it. It should open the door. The whirling in rags is a hostel cafeteria on the urban coast, frequented by dock workers.
And here's the resolution to that scene I showed earlier.
Merde! Bordel de merde!
A whorehouse of shit? It wasn't whorehouse of shit. The shot was at least 23 meters, probably 24, and then some. Nothing to be embarrassed about.
What the hell is your problem?
The fact that you interrogate yourself and the virtual dungeon master has this lovely little thing called Ludo-narrative harmony. You've probably heard of the opposite, Ludo-narrative dissonance, which is when the story's tones, themes, or plot conflict with the gameplay. And Ludo-narrative harmony is simply the inverse. You're playing as a cop trying to solve a murder. So when you're not interrogating the dungeon master or the characters in your head, you're interrogating other people and trying to read them for clues to crack the case. At its core, Disco is a game about asking questions. Small and large, thoughtful and stupid, serious and frivolous. The game has them all. Anyway, The game also does this really cool thing where your cognitive functions are also your RPG skills, and the more points you put in them, the more often they speak, and the more neurotic they get. For example, I did a playthrough as a character with an extremely high encyclopedia stat, which basically means how many facts does your character know. And in the middle of a discussion about a murder suspect, my character's internal monologue began fixating on the exact model of a car in the discussion. So it gave me the option to obsessively derail the police interview to talk about the textbook specs of the car. Another example, which is amongst my favorites, is the Inland Empire skill, which is the ability to have hunches. And it can be very useful, but past a point, you're going to end up talking to coffee mugs. This practice of treating your skills like supporting characters creates a really interesting situation where what your character is feeling is no longer left up to interpretation. You don't have to look into yourself to take an educated guess at what your character might be feeling. And because skills can talk more or less based on points invested, the way the world is narrated to you is really heavily colored by your individual character's stats. In my experience, this really streamlines the role-playing because you're no longer stopping to ask yourself what your character would think of this situation. But at the same time, there remains the wall between you and your character. It isn't just a self-insert. This delivers an experience that's smooth, while still feeling like it's in the spirit of role-playing. The effort exerted from reaching into yourself to find your character's motivation has been reduced considerably. I would describe the role-playing as feeling very ergonomic. This builds to the core gameplay loop of Disco Elysium, which is you do something, or something happens, there's an internal reaction from your cognitive functions, oftentimes letting you converse a little bit with yourself, taking internal dialogue in a deliciously literal direction, and then finally, after group deliberation, making your next move. And right there, I just want to stress that in Disco Elysium, even the act of thinking about something is a move. There's several points in the game where you can choose to talk to yourself more about failure, thereby lingering on it in your mind and causing emotional damage to yourself that you wouldn't have taken if you just glossed over it. More than just making the process of role-playing smooth, I think this core gameplay loop gets at something about the experience of being a person that most role-playing games fail to capture. You see, when I, as a person, I presume, I am presented with a choice. A lot of the time my mind is on autopilot, but in the more important moments, when I'm really engaging with the decision, there is internal dialogue. We aren't simply single entities in real life. We cycle through a lot of different modes of thinking as we turn something over in our head before making a decision. And when we engage in introspection, we interrogate ourselves. In a way, the distance of Disco Elysium, where you observe your character's life from a short distance, is almost more immersive, because that's how we observe our own lives. We think about ourselves from a short distance. Unless you're one of those allegedly common but psychotic people without an internal voice, I guess.
There's usually something extra.
More content coming soon, unless it doesn't. Like and subscribe, and I'll be more likely to make more stuff. I'm just in this for the numeric approval of strangers.